Hi everyone, it's me. So this week we are talking about how to be polite in England. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alanna and I am a Canadian who's been living here in England for almost 4 whole years. That's right, 4 years. So I have about 8 tips that I thought I would share with any other foreigners or expats or immigrants or whatever about how to not be rude here in England. So without further ado, let's go. Number 1, you buy drinks in rounds. I know this seems dumb. Most of these probably will seem dumb, but when you go to a pub, which is a fairly large part of British culture, what some countries might do, maybe even in Canada, you buy your drink, maybe you buy a drink for another person, but that's usually it. Whereas I have found here in England, if you are going to the pub with a group of friends, it's fairly common that someone will buy a round for everyone, and it is sort of assumed that you will also buy a round as well. Just something to keep in mind. Tip number 2 for foreigners, always have a box or 2 of tea bags in your house. So I don't drink tea. We've talked about this many times. Your girl does not like tea. But when somebody comes to your house, it is so common to ask them, would you like a drink? I'd love a cup of tea. Well, that's too bad, I don't have any. And then you get deported and it's a whole big mess. So it's best to have a box or 2 of tea bags in your house. Common ones I would say would be like Tetley or PG Tips, which is a real brand name. So silly to say out loud, but just have something. And if you want to get a little bit fancier, it's also very helpful to have some sugar. Okay, just pop it in your cabinet. You can forget about it for quite a while, but you will always have tea for if someone wants it when they come to your house.
So I just realized that I might not have followed my own rule about tea. Let me show you. So I knew there was some tea in the cupboard. We got mint green tea. We got gold tea bags. I don't know what gold tastes like. We got some Earl Grey, and in the back we even got some of the sleepy tea. Fantastic. I just realized both this one, February 2019 and February 2019. So if you like somewhat expired tea, please come around my house. I have so many.
Now there are 2 fairly common stereotypes in England. There's lots, but there's kind of 2 that we maybe see the most or hear the most about. So on one hand, you have the super polite, I'm saying British and English. I'm talking about England. They're also British, but we're gonna say English. This is a whole mess that I did not want to get into, so please do not comment on this portion. On one hand, you have a very polite, very conscientious, doesn't want to make a fuss. This English person might be impaled and they're bleeding out and they think, ooh, I don't really want to bother anyone. On the other hand, wow, I'm covered in hair, please disregard. On the other hand, you have the really arrogant, boisterous English person. They're at Weatherspoons and they're shouting and, let's have one impression. You what, mate? That's it. That's the whole impression. I'm not doing it anymore. I've already embarrassed myself. So these are very 2 stereotypical stereotypes, basically. In reality, you will probably come into contact with English people who are very polite. That's been my experience. Of course, there are different types of people in different areas that you go, absolutely. We don't need to get into all this stuff, but all I'm saying with this particular point is so many English people are very polite, so you should be polite too. That was a really long way of saying that thing. Now, like I mentioned about manners and being polite, that is a huge thing here in England and the UK as a whole, is having manners. Now here's where it gets a little bit difficult and maybe a little controversial, so please refrain from commenting. I'm just kidding. Comment away. I know you will. The English believe that proper manners are very important, which is great. However, they believe that what they think are manners is what everybody thinks are manners. Do you see what I'm getting at? So if you come from a country that has really different customs, different, mannerisms or politeness, that's not a word, but that's okay. What you think might be good manners is not what the English might think are good manners, and they believe that their perception of manners is the right one. So while you are in England, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So do your best to adapt to the quirks and mannerisms and politeness of the English, even if it's not quite the same as in your country, because the Brits believe it's their way or the highway. There's another thing, I don't know if I want to say this. I'm gonna say it. We're gonna rock the boat. Get ready. There are a lot of English people that watch my videos. Hey, how's it going? Like 80% of my viewers are British. And from people's comments on my videos, there are a lot of people that believe that the English way of doing things is the only way. It is the right way. It's just that. It's just that. So even when things are outdated or there's like new technology, a lot of the comments will be like disregarding the fact that other countries do it in a better way or a streamlined way by saying that the English way or the British way is just better. So things like radiators, let's say. Let's just talk about radiators. This is such a tangent, I can't help myself. Real quick. So in Canada, I personally have never seen a radiator, but I do know they exist in very old homes. But it is like a very old school thing. Any new build really will have central heating and central air conditioning in just a different system that's much more, it's fantastic. So whenever I talk about that, I get a lot of comments in my YouTube videos from people basically saying like, it's wasteful, it's too expensive, why would anybody want that? Radiators are just as good and all this stuff, and it's just like, so even in this new build here, there are radiators, and I don't really understand how they work, but I do know there are bricks inside them that heat up and then distribute the heat. And I've never heard of anything so strange in my entire life. So how does this loop back to my original point? I'm unsure about that. Basically, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. A lot of English people who watch my videos believe that the way that the English way is the right way. So you know what? Just do the English way if you can. It takes some time to figure out things, but once you get the hang of it, a lot of it does become second nature, and you'll be complaining about things in no time. I'm gonna get crucified on that last one. Anywho, let's move on. Another way not to be rude is to avoid cutting a cue. Now, we talked about this in a previous video. I think I talked about, like, it was something about English quirks or whatever. And cues or lines here in the UK are so important, so important. So if you see a cue or a line, they call them cues here, you get in the queue. You do not jump that queue. Oh my God, please don't. Another way not to be rude in England is to, please do not sit beside somebody on public transportation when there are other seats available. It's creepy, it's weird, it's an invasion of privacy. Don't do it. So a good example would be you are taking a train someplace. Trains are really popular here in England, and the carriage has all these open seats, and you decide to sit beside someone or sit really close to somebody is not okay. Don't do it. They don't want to talk to you. They are on the train for a particular reason. Leave them alone, sit someplace else. It's not offensive that you're not sitting near them. It's preferred. Okay? Great. Of course, the one day I choose to film in November, and we actually have the sun kind of out in the sky. So I'm just getting whitewashed. I'm not normally this pale, I promise you. I'm just not used to that sun just streaming in. we'll continue. I personally have found that the English are not touchers, okay? They're not touchy-feelies. They're not necessarily huggers. So in some cultures, you might go in for a cheek kiss, you might go in for a double cheek kiss, you might go straight into a hug or like a handshake hug or what have you. I find that that's not super common here in England. It really depends on the person and your relationship with them. So if you are meeting somebody for the first time, you don't go in for a hug because that's too emotional. There's definitely that old saying here in England, and I think the UK as a whole, about the stiff upper lip, which basically is like, don't think about your feelings, don't talk about your feelings, don't be mushy, don't be emotional, just get through it. Which in hindsight is pretty toxic, and I'm so sorry for everybody stuck in the stiff upper lip. But that does play into greeting people and like hugging and stuff. So like rule of thumb, I wouldn't go in for a hug. If they go in for a cheek kiss, go for it. It might probably will just be one cheek. But if anything, I find that English people are not very touchy-feely unless you already have that relationship with them. And finally, I think this is point 8, but who knows? When you drive, okay, let me set the scene first. So you're driving along in your car and you are on a road that is 2 lanes, but it's either too small for 2 cars or there are people parked on the edges and only 1 car can fit through. This happens more times than you'd imagine and I hate it, but that's besides the point. So when 2 cars are approaching, wow, there's more hair, disregard that. Say the other guy waits and he's gonna let you go through first. When you go through, you thank them. I can't stand people who don't thank me. So you might flash your lights. I know you're not really supposed to do that, but a lot of people do that. So you might flash your lights. More commonly, you'll just put your hand up as a thank you for letting me pass. So whether it's someone's letting you pass through a really narrow spot, or someone lets you pull out onto a road, or anytime somebody stops their car so you can do a thing, you always thank. All right? Always thank. And again, that just plays into manners. That's what the English do. You might not realize that it's a necessity, but it is. So if you are driving here in England, make sure to do it. I'm just gonna soak up some of the sun just for a minute because it's gonna be gone real soon and then I won't see it for like 5 months. So those are 8 tips for foreigners living here in England. I hope some of that is helpful. I do have a lot of older videos about like cultural quirks in England and how not to offend the English, although this video might have done so. I think a big part really is that you just want to do as they do. So try and say their words, try to do things the way that they would do them, and just assimilate as best as you can. And I find like that is one of the most polite things you can do as an expat. If you want to get an extra full-length video each week, make sure to check out my Patreon. It is patreon.com/adventuresandnaps. Really exciting. There's construction outside and it is driving me bonkers. If you can hear the construction, I'm so sorry. But if you do want an extra video, make sure to check out my Patreon. I post a full-length video there every Saturday that is only viewable for Patreon. It is a huge help for me, for people who can help support. I know not everybody can, so these videos will always remain, but there are extra stuff if you can swing it. I do get some messages from people asking how they can help me. Maybe they really enjoy these videos and they want to sort of give back in some way. The best way, honestly, is to check out my Patreon. Even the lowest tier, it really does help support me and I can keep making YouTube videos like this. Okay, so now there's 2 people doing construction and I'm gonna need to wrap this up. Oh my God. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!